You are listening to the It's Your Time podcast, and I'm your host, certified life coach Michelle Arnold Burke. In today's episode, I'm discussing the power of perspective, differentiating between pain and suffering.
Welcome to the It's Your Time podcast, the podcast where busy professionals like you get the practical solutions and support you need to gain control of your schedule so you can strive to be the best in your career, but without the stress and overwhelm. If you're looking to increase your energy and decrease your stress, you are in the right place.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast, friends. Happy September. I realized over the weekend that I am already halfway through this year of 50. Holy smokes. And it's funny because I tried to take some time to reflect back. Yes, a bit like what I always suggest for you to do here, either on a daily or a weekly or a monthly or yearly or maybe decades looking back, right? Whatever works for you as far as the timeline. And I wanted to think about how much I've changed since I started coaching and, of course, getting coached. And there's been a lot of change. I mean, I could, of course, think back over the 5 decades as to how much I've changed. But number one, I am pretty sure I can't remember that far back. And next, I didn't really allot for that much time. So I just went with it. And I look back and see how the ways that I think about work have changed, the way I manage my time and my energy, my relationships have changed, my income has changed. Maybe some of the most fun is around the impact that I have on others. And it's just a really great exercise to give yourself credit and to really look back at how far you've come. And listen, I also know that I still have so much growth to go. And for those of you that are younger, it is a beautiful thing that you are giving yourself this investment to learn and to evolve. And to those of you who are maybe more in line with my age, it is also a beautiful thing to give yourself this gift as well, to really take the time to look back at how you've changed and understand there can still be a lot yet that we want to accomplish because we are never too old to evolve. And let me also be fully transparent while we're talking about this because it also does not mean that I have it all figured out. And it doesn't mean that I don't sometimes slip back into old thinking. And it happened this week for me, in fact. And that's what I want to talk to you about today because I thought it would be a great opportunity to discuss the idea of pain versus suffering. And I think it's so important for many folks who are listening because once you're able to see the difference, you can maybe lighten up your life a little bit and maybe feel a bit more empowered, or at least, let's just say, a little bit better. Okay. And side note, September is also Pain Awareness Month. So I felt like it seemed doubly important to be discussing this. Okay. Now, what do I mean when I say we all experience some level of pain? And pain, as it relates to what I'm talking about today, I am talking about perhaps physical pain or maybe even emotional or mental pain. And I always, always, always want you to listen through the lens of how you can learn and grow. So think about a specific experience for yourself. Now, physical pain, something obviously caused by an injury, for example. When I'm talking about emotional pain, I'm talking perhaps grief from losing a loved one. And now, what do I mean when I'm talking about suffering? Suffering is the extra layer that you add to all of it. And notice, I said you. Well, you, me, we do it to ourselves. The suffering comes from the stories that we tell, and we often cause ourselves unnecessary suffering, in fact, with the stories that we tell. So maybe let's go with the example of there was an injury. Maybe you ruminate on it about how it should not have happened, or you should have done something differently, or you just want to be back to where you were before the actual event. Maybe if it's the death of a loved one, you add suffering by telling yourself you should have done or said something different. Really, what it comes down to is that you're arguing with what is, arguing with reality. That is what adds the suffering. And Byron Katie does a lot of work around this. She talks about the idea, she has actually a really perfect quote. When you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. So when you think your circumstances or people should be different, that is the extra layer of suffering that I'm talking about. So, back to how this came up for me this week. It was definitely old thinking patterns for sure. It had been a nutty couple of days. We had add on cases that got me home after 11 p.m., and some that had my colleagues in hospitals all the day long to then be canceled. And my brain went back to that old crazy thinking of like, this should not be happening. I should be out in the field. I should be doing something different. I should not just be sitting at this hospital. And those thoughts, my friends, are not useful because really, what was needed was exactly what I was doing, what my colleague was doing. It was exactly what needed to be done. We were waiting. And one of the days, my sweet husband, my friend Rhonda, says that that's what you say when you're down south and you're really not thinking they're so sweet. So, yes, my sweet husband, he tried to suggest a little offering to make me feel better, I guess he thought, by reminding me that this is the job and I should probably just relax. And of course, I had to let him know that never in the history of ever has someone relaxed by being told to relax, right? We know this to be true. But he did have a point. It is the job. I do know it. And now I get to decide how to react. We always get to decide how we want to react to circumstances in our lives, which, in my opinion, is the best news ever. Notice the initial response might be some old habitual patterns of thinking. It is totally normal to fall back into old patterns or habits. Our thinking is for sure a habit. And when we're not being intentional with it, it is easy to go back to what we know to be the way we've been thinking for years and years. But that, my friend, is the work that we do here to become more aware of what that is, to decide if we think that the habitual thinking, our old patterns are useful, and then choose to either keep it if it is useful or move on if it's not. So for me, I just had to like take a moment, take a breath, and tell myself to reel it back in, to take my laptop out, to get busy doing the things that also, by the way, needed to get done as I waited. And let me tell you, getting that dopamine hit of like submitting expense reports, check, cross that off the list. Doing some tests that had been due, check, mark that off the list. That feels way better than the woe is me story, like sitting here waiting. And I see this so often, especially with new people, when they then start to bring in teammates into it, right? So then you're texting people and telling them how you're still stuck there, and it goes on and on. It just feels terrible and it is optional. And I really highly suggest that you just take a moment and decide what else can be true here. Byron Katie, in fact, has 4 really great questions if you're facing something like this. And again, circumstance, it could be an actual situation that you're in. Maybe it's something that you're thinking about another person. But just take a moment and ask yourself, is it true? What you're thinking, is it true? So for me, like, I shouldn't be here. I should be doing something else. That first question pretty much answered it. Nope, it's not true. I should actually be here. Right? The second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? Now, the third question is, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And the fourth question is, who would you be without that thought? So take the thought that you are having, that, either somebody else should be different or the situation should be different or whatever it is that you seem to be struggling with, and ask, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react, or what happens when you believe that thought? And I think this is probably my most favorite question out of all of them. Who would you be without that thought? I just love, love, love that question. Oftentimes, you would be someone way more peaceful, right? For sure. I know that to be the answer I come up with often. And let me also be clear, I am not saying that you don't feel what we call the clean pain. So, grief from losing a loved one, yes, feel it, process it. There are a number of episodes that I have in the past where you can go back and look at the importance and how to process feelings. So important in your growth journey. What I'm talking about letting go of is the extra layer of suffering. And when you're able to do that, you are able to feel lighter, maybe even a bit more energized. And from there, you can take any next step in creating the life that you most want. That's where the magic is, my friends. Knowing that you can take the perspective and decide what works for you. Knowing there is a difference, a definite difference between pain and suffering. We can let go of the suffering. Okay, that's what I have for you today. Let's meet back here next week. And reminder, it's your time, right? Your time is your most valuable resource. So I appreciate that you are taking the time to be here and to listen. I appreciate that you will hopefully take some of this knowledge and use it in a way that works for you, because it is your time to create, it's your time to manage, and it's your time to do it in a way that works for you. So choose wisely. Okay, that's what I have for you now. Let's meet back again next week. But for now, make it a great day. Take care.
Did you know you can take this work to a deeper level with me one-on-one? Go to michelleburkecoaching.com and click on Get Started to begin.